Hi everybody, this is a recommended solution to structure charts case study 2. I'm not going to go over the whole problem. Hopefully you've attempted the problem and you know what is coming in this video. It does relate to a type robot. This should say end type, by the way. I'll fix that. So each robot type has an ID, a can move indicator, which is a boolean, and an hours used indicator as well, which is an integer. This problem has been described as follows. A global array of 500 robot records is searched by a subroutine process records. Each time a record is found that has an ID, remember each robot has an ID, starting with RBX, 10 hours is added to its hours used field. Once the array has been processed, another subroutine display count displays the total number of robot records that were updated. So let's focus on this process records problem. This is task 2. Complete the pseudocode for the process records subroutine. Assume that the global array has been declared already as follows. Okay? So, what does process records do again? So let's just task 2. This is it a function? Each time a record is found, once the array has been processed, display the total number of records that were updated. So I'm assuming this is a function then, which is going to return the total number of robot records. Okay, so this is a function called process records, and I'm just going to make a note here that it manipulates a global variable called robots. So I'm just going to use the same identifier, and that's an array 1 to 500 of robot type. And it returns a count, so it returns integer. Okay, so this is the function header. Now let's get into the function. What does it do again? It searches the array, and each time a record is found that has an ID starting with RBX, 10 hours is added to that robot's hours used field. Okay, so we're going to use a for loop to loop through the whole array, starting at the lower bound 1 to the upper bound 500, 1 to 500. And we're going to say if the robot that we are currently processing, so that's robots I, that's a robot. Okay, this is a robot. Each element is a robot. So if robots I dot ID is the same as RBX, each time a record is found that has an ID starting with RBX, so it's not the full ID. Are we given an indication of what an ID might look like? No. Okay, but each time a record is found that has an ID starting with RBX, so I'm going to use the left built-in function, and we're going to take out 3 characters from the ID, and if it's the same as RBX, then we're going to add 10 hours to that robot's hours used field. Then robots I dot hours used, is that the correct name? Hours used will be assigned robots I dot hours used plus 10. We're just adding 10 to the hours used field for any robot that has an ID starting with RBX. So this does it return anything? There must be a count as well, right? Once the array has been processed, another subroutine displays the total number of robot records that were updated. So there is a count in here as well, I think. So let's take care of that. Declare count to be an integer and give it a starter value of 0. And if we have a change to be made, we're also going to update count and end 4 and return the count and end function. So that is the solution, I believe, or a recommended solution to task 2. Okay, it's not completely obvious here that this function is returning a count. You've really got to read that task carefully to grasp that. So if you didn't get the return of the count in your solution, don't panic, as long as you made a good attempt at updating the hours used record. Okay? So let's go on to task 3. Another subroutine needs to be programmed. Okie dokie. Let's just come up to task 3. Another subroutine needs to be programmed, add robot. This subroutine adds a new robot record to the array. For example, so we've got an array here with some robots, and then we've got none when there is no robot. As you can see, robot records are stored in the array. None is used if no record exists yet. Add robot will determine the next available element. So it finds the index of the first none. That's the next available element, and it puts a robot there. Okay? If the array is full, a message array full is displayed. So I think this is a procedure. I don't think it's returning anything. So procedure add robot. I'm just going to use that by ref thing for our global variable. It's an array of 1 to 500 of robot. Okay, so that's the parameter. Now what we want to do first is really find the first instance of none, because that will tell us where to put the new robot. Okay? So let's create a variable to help us process the array. So declare I to be an integer, while robots I doesn't equal none. We're going to do something, and we're going to increment I. Now, so it doesn't equal none, 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 equals none, so I will be this index here. The problem, of course, is if all of these, if the array is already full. Okay? So I is going to jump out of the array. So we're just going to catch that, and I is less than or equal to 500, because those are all valid indexes. So we need to make sure that we stay within the array. So we're just going to increment I. Okay. Now we need to just have a look at the value of I. So if I is 501, to get out of the loop, if I is 501, then we're going to output array full. Else, we're going to ask the user to enter some data. And we're going to put that data, use it to put into a robot. So I'm also going to declare another variable called new robot, and this is data type robot. So we're going to get some information, and then we're going to push it into this new robot. New robot dot ID equals ID is assigned, sorry. New robot dot can move is assigned this input here, which I've also called can move, and new robot dot hours used is assigned this thing that I've called hours used as well. So we've just put all of the data into the new robot. Now we need to put the new robot into the correct place in the array. So robots I will be assigned this new robot. And that is the end of the if, and that is the end of the procedure. Okay? So the first part of this was to determine the index of the next available none. That was the first part. Then we just have a look at that index and make sure that it's in the array. If it's not, we're just going to say the array is full. Otherwise, we're going to input some data, assign that data to a new robot, which I've declared up here, and then assign that robot to the robot array at the correct index. Okay.